Good morning. My name is Ginny, and I am here to chair the first panel of today. Our panel is reflecting on educating Catholic girls for leadership and social transformation. I am here from the UK, and I'm the Catholic chaplain to the University of Roehampton in London. And I've been asked to briefly say I contributed to the Visions and Vocations book, looking at the wider role of hospitality a university chaplain plays, but also that relationship with young Catholic women as they come into their university experience. So it's a pleasure to sit here with three wonderful women who are involved in that journey before they ever get to university in schools around the world. So we have today with us Catherine Cavanagh from Canada, Elizabeth Mudzimu from Zimbabwe, and Julia Waters from the UK. And they will spend the first few minutes introducing themselves and saying a little bit of a reflection on our title of Leadership and Social Transformation. And then the hope was we would have a slightly informal discussion between the three of them, loosely monitored by me, but we're not sure how it will work with this room, so we're going to give it a go. But there'll be some questions and some general reflections to come. So first, if I can ask Catherine to introduce herself.
So I'm a Catholic high school teacher and chaplain in Ontario, Canada. I was drawn to this vocation because I witnessed one strong female leader after another in my own Catholic education. In Ontario, our Catholic high schools are publicly funded and open to all. Our student population is as diverse as the world we live in, with all its beauty and all its challenges. In high school chaplaincy, as in our schools as a whole, we look only for the possibility and the potential of our youth. We strive to create a sense of belonging and offer a deep hospitality to empower all our students, regardless of who they are. Whatever their race, creed, gender, sexual orientation, or ability, they have a home with us. The welcome is primordial. And when we offer that hospitality profoundly and sincerely, we watch our students flourish. They speak for peace. They work for justice. They engage in prayer. They respond to the love they feel around them, and they return it to the world 100-fold. Yet still, fewer and fewer of our students are connected to a parish. They say the message of empowerment and hospitality they receive in their high school is not as clearly present in the wider church. My female students ask how they can feel truly welcome when they do not see themselves represented amongst the decision makers in the upper echelons of the church or at the altar. They ask, how can we teach them to be leaders and tell them they are not welcome to lead? We as a church cannot yet offer them an answer that will satisfy them, and we must wrestle with this. Secondly, although our female students will hear numerous women open the scriptures for them in school, in the Sunday Mass, they never hear a woman interpret Scripture. How do we fill that gap? And related to that, many have told me that they don't feel that the wisdom of biblical women is given the emphasis it deserves when it is brought up in the Mass. To give one example, why is Mary of Nazareth so often stuck to her pedestal, represented as a figure of obedience and maternity, yes, but she is also the most magnificent role model of a young female leader. She is the one who says yes to God, although every convention and tradition says she must not. She is the leader who calls for justice and courage and peace in the Magnificat. She is the one who demonstrates most profoundly the need to welcome the voices of all. So let us listen to our young women, and let us wrestle with these questions that they bring to us. Let us bring them home and offer them a deeper hospitality, one at the heart of our tradition, of Scripture, and of our God.
Thank you. And to Elizabeth.
So thank you, Jean. I'm a contributor in this book, and I write on the Catholic Church in shaping vocation to motherhood in Zimbabwe. And I refer to...
They can't hear you from it.
Cool. So I begin. Okay. So I said I'm a contributor in this book, and I'm writing on the Catholic Church's role in shaping vocation to motherhood in Zimbabwe, where I refer to motherhood as a mirage. And in this, I mean that motherhood is often not clear to girls. And my argument is, if the vocation to motherhood is to be meaningful, the church has to avoid a one-size-fits-all approach in their teaching and go down to the lived experiences and local context of the people. And today we discuss educating Catholic girls for leadership and social transformation. Historians will remind us of Indo-European women who possessed economic and political leadership roles around as early as the 16th century. And coming closer to our topic for today, let me draw your attention to some women, among others, who were proponents of social transformation. I submit to you the administration of Mary Robinson of Ireland, who fought for women's rights in a dialogical manner. And I submit to you the leadership of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia, who would not hesitate to declare that women make better leaders, and I quote, "Women are more committed, women work harder, and women are most honest. They have less reasons to be corrupt." With this historical background, I'm convinced that when it comes to leadership, women are not children of a lesser God. They can do better. What men can do, women can do double. And this is the reason this panel argues that it is important to educate Catholic girls so that they become leaders for social transformation, actors, not factors, subjects, not objects of their lives. I thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And over to Julia for her first reflection.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and my name is Julia Waters. I'm head teacher of the Ursuline High School in Wimbledon, which is in southwest London. I was walking around my school last week, showing visitors around. Our little year 6 girls were looking to see whether they wanted to come to the Ursuline. And we were talking to students as we went around the school, and we met a year 13 girl, a girl who's just applying to university. And she was showing the students in year 6 and their parents her work. And it was a beautiful oil painting of a tower block. And as you know, in London, there was a huge fire last year at Grenfell Tower, and many people were killed. And she was reflecting on what it means to be part of a community. And she was drawing her tower block and saying as many people, she thought she knew more people in a community in her tower block than she would have done had she lived in a terraced house amongst the many long streets in London. But what she was aspiring to become was an architect, and this drawing was part of her A-level work preparing for university. And she wanted to be an architect so that she could go back to the land of her parents in Uganda and start supporting a new way of living communally through being an architect. And what inspiration I found her to be, because that's what our Catholic school should be about, is about giving girls a dream and a vision of the future which will make a difference in the world. I share with you that story because the question I asked myself when I was going around and listening to her was, how had she got to this position? What had we done as a school which had enabled her to be so confident and articulate about her future? And there are a number of things I'd like to share with you. A curriculum which is broad and balanced, which gives every girl the opportunity to find her passion in life. An enrichment curriculum that enables her to develop her perseverance, her confidence, the ability to be articulate, to come to conferences like this and have conferences in our own schools where girls can speak their voice, have their voice heard. And also a caring, nurturing environment where we all know that mental health is such a big issue for our young women today, to have the support networks within the schools, the counsellors, to support them through those difficult times. But most of all, the girls have to have the opportunity to reflect on their beliefs, to reflect on what makes them tick, the core essence of their being. And for us as an Ursuline school, it's very much about developing their gifts and talents for the common good. And that's central, I think, to our Catholic faith. And I believe that that girl I shared her story with you about had actually done that and had made the connection between what made her tick and what her future career could be. So as I finish off, it is great to have our school as a community, a church community, but the church is wider than our school. And my concerns are when our girls leave our school, what is there for them? And I know that many of our girls are turning their backs on our church and saying they can't align themselves with the church in terms of how they treat gay people, how they treat women, and they're choosing to move away from the church as they leave our church communities in schools. And that's a question that has to be asked, what can we do to keep them within our wider church community? Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Well, I think that leads us perfectly, actually, into the first question. And I similarly was reflecting. I was invited to sit on a parish council only a couple of weeks ago, purely with the question, how do we get young people back in our churches, which I feel is an ongoing conversation that has been around forever. And I sat there and thought, first you actually have to want to listen to them, and I'm not sure that was why they'd invited me. I think they wanted quick answers. So to the three of you, I think you've highlighted that divide in schools. They're hearing voices, they're getting wider experiences, and the diversity and an equality level is much more obvious. So how do we get the church to hear the voices of our young women, and not just to hear and sit with them in front of them, but actually listen to what they're saying and then do a response to those needs? Can I come back to you, Catherine?
Well, the thing is this. Our students, I see it all the time, are inspired by the faith stories that they hear. But when they go to church, they simply do not feel that sense of inspiration or that sense of welcome. So I think there's work to be done at the parish level to bring them in. And part of what has to happen is find ways where their voices can be heard, and that the people that they wish to, whose role model they wish to follow, are present in those churches. As long as we don't see women, adult women, more actively preaching or speaking in our churches, more actively on the altar, I'm not sure how we draw in the next generation of students. We work very hard in our schools to bring parish, home, and school together, but the draw is simply not there, and that's where the conversations have to be had. Our kids are amazing. They will transform the world if we give them the opportunity, but we have to open that door and draw them in.
Thank you. Elizabeth, do you have any reflections from your own experience of where it maybe is working?
Yes, thank you very much. I think for the most part we, you and me, have taken children as children and say they do not have voice. And so we, for the most part, wait until they're adults. Then we say, let them talk now. That's the time to talk. But the mistake you and me make is that when they are growing, they are establishing their horizons. And as they grow up, then they are no more interested in the church. So my proposal is let these young children or young girls speak for themselves as they grow and give them space and say, hey, what do you want? And then we respond to what they want, not to what we think. I would say let's take a bottom-top approach when it comes to educating these girls. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would suggest one thing, that parishes need to be led by teams of people, and one person in that team must be a woman, and that woman must have responsibility for the development of the faith formation of young people in their parish. And I think that every archbishop ought to appoint a woman to make sure that that happens and to support the professional development, or the formation rather, of their priests. I think that would be a very practical step. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I guess moving on from that though, do you see trends in your own cultures and contexts of where young women are beginning to find voices and where they might be able to take the lead in developing and changing our church cultures where we're sitting at the moment, whether that's through specific social programs or developments in school that you're doing that can be taken out further into the parish.
Okay. We've had 2 fantastic conferences for girls over the last 18 months. One was an interfaith conference where 500 girls came from different faith backgrounds to share their experiences of their faith and listen to inspirational women tell their stories. And when we had one at Roehampton with Professor Beattie, where girls from Catholic schools came to share their reflection and shared how would they like to see the church move forward. So I think gathering women together like today, but in schools and having that opportunity.
Our girls see the power of faith when they're in high school, I believe. They get involved in all kinds of projects. We have a massive walk against poverty. Our school's only got about 450 students, but we get kids from the elementary school. We get 1,000 kids walking down the street. We invite our civic leaders, and they're carrying signs that say, do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. They can speak the words of faith. They know that Christ calls us to love those who are most marginalized, those who are most distant. But they lose those opportunities when they get older. And there's not yet, I feel, from what I hear from my students, a reason that they feel that they should fight for that to be in the church, because they have other avenues where they can do that. And so we have, as a church, have to make sure that they see the church itself as that empowering place that they can go to continue that work for justice and peace and so many other things.
Yeah, I want to take it from my own context, and I think when it comes to women taking a lead, in my own context, I say there's a change, if I may say, where women would take up leadership roles, for instance, in parishes, where I'm coming right from. You see that there's a lot of progress when women are leading, to the extent that the other women go like, oh, we didn't know that there's a lot of power in women. But what I see lacking in most of these women, or in most of us women, is confidence to say, hi girls, we can do it.
Absolutely, thank you. And the other thing I notice that from a university perspective, once the students who walk through my door either come, and often because they've been through maybe Catholic education, come with a real confidence in knowing church teaching, and often they know what they're meant to do or what they're not allowed to do, and I spend a lot of time unpacking these kind of, I've been told I'm not to do this or I'm not to do that, and often for me it's again going back to the heart of scriptures and sitting with them and looking and saying, we have the church's teaching, and you've had that your whole parish or school upbringing. Now how do we get back to that heart of scriptures and actually give them the words themselves, give them their own language, and help them interpret that in a way they feel enabled to, without the fear that they're doing something wrong against the church?
Well, I really feel the church needs to work on that. In our schools, we do unpack the scriptures for our students. Our girls know that the first person that Jesus holds up as an example for all of us to follow is the widow of Zarephath, a woman, and yet we rarely hear a homily preached about her. They know the story of Lazarus, but they know the part that's optional in the Sunday lectionary, at least in North America, the part where after Martha meets Jesus and before he goes and raises Lazarus, that Martha goes home to Mary and raises her and brings her to Christ. But these things are considered optional, and our church has to bring back a real exploration of the wisdom of the biblical women, because that is attractive to our girls and it empowers them.
Quite exciting unpacking the scriptures. I would like to say, I think there's a way in which educators try to unpack the scriptures so that women or girls understand the portion of women and girls. But unfortunately, if I may say, there are moments when women from different contexts unpack the scriptures to subordinate themselves. For instance, hey women, you're supposed to be under your husbands. Then if you hang on to that, you are kind of diluting the leadership energy or power in you as a woman?
I think the best way for women in terms of leadership is to get to know other people, other women who have to share their stories with them, because that's what inspires women to become leaders, is when they know other women has done it before them and that they can listen to their stories. And I think that's the most inspiring thing.
So I guess my final question, taking into effect that culture and the places where we all sit will be different, that giving the wider voice to those coming up behind us, is there energy, do you think, to try to help through networks like this, actually bringing in the younger voice, organizing things to bring them together, to let them take the lead on this? And where do we sit as, I guess, the women who are dreaming with and for them? How do we help them see that vision come? How do we network together? How do we move things forward from the position where we are? Anyone?
I think these networks are incredibly important, and we don't have enough of them. What we have to offer our students often in my context in Canada is a very sort of, I don't like the word, but kind of fundamentalist, traditional gatherings of students. And we need more where the girls can feel empowered. And we need that as much for the boys as the girls, because the boys have to understand who the girls truly are as well in order to have positive relationships. So yeah, we need more of it, but it's something we still have to work on.
I think there's an issue about girls' confidence to talk about their faith, because they're not used to talking about their faith. And I think when they meet girls from other schools, from other contexts, that's what gives them confidence when they're part of something bigger than themselves. And I really hope our girls here today will get that from being here today.
I want to talk of a pluriversality approach whereby everybody should be acting in this role, not wait for the women to educate other women. I wish if it could be coming more, and I want to congratulate the men within us here, more from men, and it makes a lot of, impact, as in empowering women, men empowering women, then we also come to back up. I think that's the pluriversality approach that I'm up to.
Brilliant. Well, watch this space. Amazing things may yet happen, I'm sure. But before we finish, I just want to give everyone a chance to say just one or two sentences of anything you want to leave as a burning reflection here that we can all take away with us. Maybe if we start at the opposite end this time, it's 1 or 2 sentences.
Okay, I've already thought about what I'm going to do when I go back to school, and I'm going to write to our parish priest and get a petition from our girls for an inclusive language in our parish. 1,400 girls will sign that petition, and I'll let you know how it goes.
I'm excited to say in this room I've seen already 2 Zimbabwean priests, and I would say my challenge to us as Zimbabweans is that we go back to our context and say what is lacking in teaching the Catholic girls and women that which can empower them fully from their context.
I like the idea that Julia had there, and maybe we'll borrow that as well. But I also just want to thank all of you for being here, because this is listening to us, to our girls, and we're all taking this message forward together. So thank you.
So this just leaves me to thank Julia, Elizabeth, and Catherine for sharing the stage with me, and to check off the list, the first panel has finished. Thank you.